And setting up your meeting for Facebook Live. Okay, here we are. We have got ourselves on the live stream. Yay!
Success.
Yes, sometimes this Zoom, well, it's my first time on Zoom, so it's I didn't understand that you need lag time, and if it doesn't work, you do it over again, right?
Just try again.
Do it over. You just try again until you get on. You make your way through. So, hello, this is Lianna from the Shameless Pleasure movement. And this is your home for enlightened, awakened conversations, for transmissions about relationships and sexuality. And today I have a guest, Stacy. Now I've already forgotten this pronounced
Isidro.
Isidro. Where does that originate from? Your last name?
That's a Cuban last name.
Cuban. Oh, wow, beautiful, beautiful. It's so unusually spelled. You must get that all the time. What is that? How do you pronounce that?
Yes, and it's
Yes.
way easier than it seems.
Right, right. Once you get it, once you know it, once you know who you are. So we're going to have a conversation around creating pleasure, shame-free and substance-free. And let me just let's just see here. Now the notes that I had seem to have disappeared. So maybe I will get you to introduce yourself. You have all sorts of interesting qualifications. You've done all sorts of cool things. And then you have this beautiful focus on moving through sexuality without substances. And so we'll get into discussing that a little bit, what that means for you, and how that is a process for other people. So first of all, let's hear about you a little bit, Stacy.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me and creating this format and allowing me to be present with you today. My name is Stacy Isidro, and I am a sexuality coach. And I help people experience mind-blowing pleasure without the use of drugs or alcohol. What I find is that a lot of people have social anxieties and they have some shame and guilt around sexuality, especially once stopping substance use. For people in recovery, they often feel like virgins all over again. So we go through this process of redefining our sexual selves, or getting to know our sexual selves. And what they really want is to feel honored. And they want to deeply connect intimately with their partners and get their needs met, and also please their partner, and stepping into that space without the use of drugs or alcohol.
Well, it's such a main part of our culture, isn't it?
Yes, so much of our socializing and celebrating tends to revolve around drugs or alcohol. So it could be a challenging space to navigate if you're not used to being sober or clean. And some people do that by choice, just because they realize that they want to be more conscious and present in their experience. And some people have had substance abuse issues and go into recovery and are wanting to step into the space all over again. So I serve clients from either background.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I know that this is, it's something that we all move towards when it comes to sexuality or connecting intimately, because if you feel like if you have a drink or two or three or four, then you start to relax, that you can, and you do, one or two drinks can help you relax. But there have been so many situations that I've heard about where people have never had sexual experiences without having a lot of alcohol. and they start with that when they're younger, maybe in the teens, and it just continues. And then it's that connection that alcohol or heavy amount of drugs, but usually it's a lot of alcohol, is connected with having sex. You can't have it without. So do you want to speak about that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. How we're programmed from our culture and society and just our own experience, gets us to where we are today. And when we're using most substances, especially alcohol, there is a level of disconnection that occurs and
Yeah.
a level of unconsciousness that occurs. And so oftentimes we get ourselves into situations that maybe we wouldn't have chosen to be in if we were in a clear frame of mind. Um, I don't know if anyone else that's watching this has ever had a consent regret situation, like you did something when you were drinking and then later were like, oh man, that really sucked, or I really wish I wouldn't have done that, or I wish I could remember what I did, or just, you know what I mean? Going
Yeah.
back and then feeling like, oh
Yes.
man, like what the hell just happened? Or like I've gone on dates with somebody in the past and drank way too much and ended up having sex and then felt like embarrassed, like, oh my God, like I was really intoxicated and that was a really great guy and I just wrecked that opportunity because it got out of control or out of hand. So,
Hmm.
anyone that can identify with wanting to be more conscious and present in their sexual experiences and their relationships, this might be a good topic to explore. So, I don't ever, shame alcohol or drug use. I just
Hmm.
like to acknowledge the benefits of being able to step into that space with a clear mind and with full presence and able to consent with your full yes or with your empowered no on what's best for you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, and how many have had that experience? I'm sure many. I have had that experience. I haven't now since I've been married because I understand I've gone through that experience and numbers of times before. And I remember one of the first boyfriends a long time ago who didn't know how to have sex without alcohol, and I had kind of come through that already because having an experience of having a lot of alcohol and then having sex and then forgetting what the experience was like, forgetting what actually happened even, and then connecting with somebody who was in that. I said, no, no, like just try this without having alcohol and see what happens. And he was quite scared in that situation. So what do you find, like what are people saying about that? If it,
Yeah, I definitely hear people talk about, well, my partner doesn't want to have sex with me unless they're drinking, or,
mm,
and it makes me feel uncomfortable that, they always have to be drunk in order to have sex with me, or just someone realizing, like, I am so in my head, I can't even be present and connect without having a few drinks. So they
mm-hmm.
start disconnecting and, losing an amount of inhibitions and using that substance as a gateway to step into a situation. So my invitation is, what would it be like to get rid of that social anxiety and the fear around, and the fear of rejection, the fear of walking up to someone and saying hi, or um, getting rid of the body image issues associated with not being able to step into that space. Like, can you just imagine if you were fully confident and present and stepping into a state of pleasure where you could deeply connect and
Yeah,
feel all of the pleasure in your body rather than using a substance that shuts down parts of your body and the sensitivity to your body. So, a lot of times, people have found, and I have found, that using substances often takes away from the amount of pleasure and connection that we're experiencing with a partner. So, it
mm-hmm.
lowers our capacity for pleasure.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And there is just so much pleasure that you can have. There are so many levels that you can enter into when you're much more lucid and more present in the moment.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important work to be focusing on when there's just such a rampant problem with alcoholism. And I mean, I know from, um, I'm just looking here at the live. It doesn't look like the live is moving at the moment on Facebook, but we can continue the conversation and I can upload it after. You want
Yeah,
to do
yeah,
that?
for sure.
Because I don't really want, I don't know about going off and then going back on again. I'm not sure.
Yeah, or you can post the Zoom link into the comments if that is possible.
Oh God, I don't know. Can't even know if I can get into that
Well, then we'll just
situation. But
repost the video. Mhm.
yeah, we'll repost the video because it is recording, so we will have it. And I don't know why it cancel. It doesn't look like it's moving on the live, but huh, we'll have a good conversation that I can post, and we can post on YouTube too. So we were talking about being present in the moment, um, and being able to explore at a deeper level if you're not filled with substances, or like you said, it takes your consciousness away from what's actually happening and the actual deeper exploration, the connection with the partner, all of these things. So
Yeah.
what, yeah, let's go into that a little bit more, because you just talked about the shame and the fear
Mhm.
um, when you don't have alcohol, and that's kind of why people go into it. That's why people start with drinking, and then maybe it just perpetuates. So how can people get through that fear and shame, the fear of like approaching someone or having sex even?
So there's a lot that goes into that. But one thing that I found is really helpful is starting to address any type of and identify what those fears are. A lot of people have a fear of rejection, and they think that if someone doesn't want to be with them, that that means that there's something wrong with them. And
Yeah.
so, by really diving into that and starting to understand that a lot of times when someone is a no, it has more to do with them and where they're at, not necessarily what's going on with you.
Yeah.
So, learning how to accept someone's no and accept someone's yes is really, really
Mm.
helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some different exercises that I go through with people that help them start to heal that fear of rejection and really come into acceptance of someone's yes and someone's no. Also, a big part of it is, I think, learning what it is that you actually want and what is it
Mm.
that you're looking for. And then we choose to like, we choose to approach potential partners from a space of curiosity as far as I know what I want and these are what my needs are. What are your needs? Are they on the same page? Because if they are, then maybe we want to step into this space. And if they're not on the same page, then you may not want to go into that space with them anyways. So sometimes I think people act from a place of desperation, as in, I'll take anything. And,
Mm.
they're not really clear on what it is that they're looking for. And it's a constant needing to fill something within you that you feel like is lacking, like looking to fill it from the outside. And that never is going to work. That's part of why
Yeah.
people seek out drugs or alcohol in the first place, because there's a feeling of something lacking within me. And so I'm going to fill that with something on the outside, which leads to more devastation ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
So starting to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what is it that you actually want. What does
Yeah.
sex mean to you? What type of relationships are you open to? And getting really, really clear about that. And then you start choosing better partners, which ultimately helps deal with rejection, but also puts you in a position of power, empowerment within yourself, as far as I know what I want, I know what I'm looking for. who is going to be a good fit for me.
So you have to really do some inner work, is what you're saying, before you step into the connection, so that you're much more clear as to what you want within this. But sometimes there's that that energy that just pulls you in, and you lose all clarity.
Yeah, sometimes there, is great chemistry between people, which is amazing. One thing that I have found is that stepping into a sexual space before actually getting to know that person can sometimes lead to a detrimental situation, only because if you're seeking something more and now you're in a relationship with someone based on sex, but you're really wanting, the intimacy, connection, a partner. And then as you get to know this person over time and you just keep having sex with them, you realize like, oh, we're out of alignment in a lot of these areas. But I'm still going to keep seeing them anyways, because at least we're having sex. So then it's like
Right.
you're compromising your own needs and probably the other person as well, because you're getting sex from this person. So you're willing to deal with all this other stuff that is out of alignment with you. Right.
Yeah.
So, starting to have some conversations before jumping in that space can be really beneficial. Even if you aren't looking for a serious connection, there's something to be said for being upfront and honest about, what, I'm just looking to have a great time tonight and connect with someone, and I'm not looking for anything long term. Do you want to have fun? I feel an energy between us. Are you open to that? And then that way the other person can consent as well. Oh yeah, like I'm not trying to jump into a relationship, but I'm feeling this vibe right now and I'd love to have an experience with you. Let's go. Or it could be, oh, actually, you know what? I am looking for more of a relationship. So I'm really enjoying this connection. However, I know that I'm going to want more out of that. So maybe I don't want to do that.
Yeah, this is such great conversation. If you can feel strong enough to be able to really allow your desires to come through in that situation. And I mean, the reason why we drink is because we can't. Many people cannot do that. It's difficult to. It's very difficult to just put yourself in a vulnerable place like that, to say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I want. So what can people do to practice that, even in a
So
relationship? Even in a relationship, long-term relationships, it's sometimes difficult for people to express their actual desires in the moment, and without, I'll just have a few drinks first and then I'll be able to talk here.
right. So there's a couple of things that come up. Um, First of all, sometimes we don't really know what our needs are. There's a lot of times just, going into a situation blindly and then being dissatisfied later, but you weren't really clear on what you wanted in the first place. So it's like, no
Yeah.
wonder that wasn't that great. So I think it comes down to really, first of all, clarifying what is your desire? What is your need?
Yeah.
So I go through a process with people where we start to uncover some of these attitudes and ideas and beliefs around sex, right? So where did they come from? They come from our culture and religious and our society, our family, and also our experiences. And then sometimes over time, what we realize is that something that we thought was true is not necessarily what the greater truth is.
Mm-hmm.
So we get a chance to redefine, what does sex mean to me? I can have an energetic orgasm with someone and not have to be in a straight out like penetrative sexual state, or maybe I do want to be in that type of a state. So first of all, doing some journaling around, what does sex mean to me? What is sex for? And who is sex okay with for me? Am I okay to have sex with men or women or people that are non-binary? Or is sex for me only okay in a monogamous relationship? Or am I open to being in an open relationship? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Do I not want to date someone that has a partner who doesn't know about me, you know? So really getting clear on who do I actually want to have sex with in the first place? Why am I having sex? Is it for connection? Is it just for pleasure? Is it for to relax? Right? And you could
Yeah.
find that you're in different states at different times. But if we can get clear on, you know, the bottom line of that, I could be in a space where I'm like, ooh, I'm into sex for pleasure right now. Or I could be in a space where I'm into sex for like I'm this deeper connection and this sense of like unification and love and, you know, so doing
Mm-hmm.
some journaling around those values. Um, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, the way I go about doing it is it's called a dyad. So I'll take a topic, and if anyone that's listening wants to try it, they're welcome to.
Mm-hmm. Please do.
Um, yeah, so you pick a question, right? Like for
Yeah.
example, sex is okay when, and so then I ask, sex. Tell me about something when sex is okay. Okay, well, then you write this down. Sex is okay when there's mutual desire. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sex
Mm-hmm.
is okay when, and then you write another one down.
Mm-hmm.
Sex is okay when. So it's continuing to ask that same question over and over again. And on the surface, you'll start to get some, you know, basic stuff, some kind of like obvious answers. But the more you push and the deeper you go, sex is okay
Mm-hmm.
when. Sex is okay when. Then you really start to get into the deeper layers of what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's an
You have to spend some
exercise.
time, some time going
Yeah,
in, diving
doing
in, and
some
then
digging.
really understanding yourself so that when you do go and approach somebody or you are wanting to have sex, you know yourself, you know yourself much better. You're diving
Hmm.
in and saying, hey, I remember what I was, putting down there, what I was going over about who I am as a sexual being, what it is that I want, what it is that I desire. And it takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of focusing in.
Yeah, and I don't think that people have ever really had the opportunity to dissect some of those
No.
values and attitudes and ideas around sexuality. We just tend to get in modes where it's like, oh, all men XYZ or
Yeah.
all women XYZ. And then we're going around with this false belief that is ultimately like working against us, which really isn't the greater truth. You know, like
Exactly.
the old like, well, women don't like sex. Well, guess what? Women love sex and just as much
Yes.
as men.
Yes, they
Okay.
do. Yes, they
So
do.
you know, so let's shift that there. Let's talk about that, because if we're always operating from a, well, women don't like sex or sex is not okay, then
All
we're
men ever want is sex. All
right,
men
is
want is
sex.
sex.
Right. You know, and I even have some theories around that because I've worked with men specifically over the last 10 years around sexuality. And like in our culture, you know, men are told to play it up and exaggerate about sex. They're told that their worth and their masculinity is defined by how many people they have sex with, how hard their erection is, how big their cock is, and on and on and on. And then women are
Yeah.
told, oh, nice girls don't do this. You know, if you like it, then you're a slut. So it's like getting fed these opposite messages, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
women are inundated with like connection and touch, even just platonically. And men are really dissected out of that in our culture. It's like you go to work, you bring home the money, you pay the bills, and you have sex. And if you have kids, great, then you get to be a father too. But there's really no level of even platonic touch or intimacy that's involved in those roles. And the only
Yeah.
place that men are allowed to feel vulnerable or express emotion or have any kind of touch is through sex. So it's like, well, no wonder they're gravitating towards sex, because they were taught that this is the only place that they're allowed to have that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's
sex
been
is
kind of,
considered Yeah, sex has been considered the connection for men. And it there is that saying that connection for women, connection is about sex, and for men, sex is about connection. So there
Mm-hmm.
is that slightly different outlook between men and women, but that doesn't mean you can't go into this through intention, through understanding what you want, through spending a little bit of time with yourself and figuring out, who am I as this sexual person? What is it that I actually desire to have sexually? What do I want right now? And as you're mentioning, it changes. So
Mm-hmm.
it's something that you're constantly having, not constantly, but you have to look at um, a number of times as you move through your life, so you can really connect with your ever-changing being.
Yeah, and in one of the programs that I'm certified to teach and coach people on, it's called the Erotic Blueprint course. And
Mm-hmm.
we go through
Erotic blueprint
the,
course. That's cool. Okay, yeah, tell us about
yes.
that.
Well, it's found the founder of the course is Jaya, and she's a
Mm-hmm.
world-renowned sex educator with well over 20 years experience. And I've been mentoring with her really closely the past couple of years. And I've seen this course make a huge difference in people's lives and in even my own. But what made me bring it up is we talk about in this course that there's different stages of sexuality that we go through. And
Right.
sometimes it's even a state. So a stage could be a longer period of time. A state could just be maybe you move in different states throughout the day, right?
Yeah.
So the stages are resting, which means that there's not much movement there. You're content just being, maybe you're choosing to be celibate, or maybe you're just in a sexless situation. Then there's a healing state, which could be emotional healing. It could be physical healing. Maybe you've had a surgery or an injury or just had a baby. So you're just in a healing state. And
Yeah.
then there's a curious state where you're like, ooh, I kind of want to know about this stuff. Like, what does that mean? So you kind of go on
Mm-hmm.
these deep dives, like, what is Tantra? What are the blueprints? What is
Open
this
the door.
BDSM? Yeah. So you
Yeah.
start researching all this stuff. And then you go into an adventurous state where you're like, okay, now I want to try it. Let's do it. So then you go
Yeah.
out and have
Take
all
the
these
step.
different experiences and try things out. And then sometimes you get to this transformational state where you're like, man, I've been there and I've done that. What else is there?
Yeah.
Like that's the space that I really love, because it, especially moving into like sober sex, because you can actually experience like altered states of consciousness through energetic exchanges, through sex, whether it's in like a kink experience, or from like a tantric experience. Your brain starts releasing all these endorphins and hormones that
Mm-hmm.
is, that's when you get that kind of euphoric feeling. And when
Absolutely.
we're using substances, we don't really get that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, we
Yeah.
just go through different stages and different states of our life. So it's about accepting where we're at right now, and knowing that that's going to pass and it'll move forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can get to know your body just so much better when it's clean, when it's
Hmm.
um, when it when it's open to the possibilities, because now you've got clarity. You're able to develop more presence with your partner. So developing that presence can creates a deeper connection with them, so that you can dive into deeper places, going into places that are beyond the physical body, transcendent type of experiences. And I love the flow that happens, as you mentioned, the different flow state that you go through, which also you go back and forth as well. You might
Hmm.
go back into experimenting. You might go down to like, oh, I don't really feel like having any sex right now. And then, so you really, to going back up to being very sexually interested again, because wow, something else has excited you. And so you don't really, so what I'm understanding is you can't really understand these states as well. You can't really understand yourself as well if you are constantly in a state of intoxication,
Yeah,
basically.
absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of times, with the blueprints, it's an arousal and typing system. So it breaks down how we experience pleasure into different blueprints. And if we're experiencing arousal and pleasure um, one way, and then our partner's experiencing it another way, then sometimes it's like, well, I'll just, drink and then it won't be as big of a deal and I won't really care. And it's like, whatever. And we're blocking the flow of pleasure into our lives.
Yeah.
And we're blocking that connection with our partner. And so when we're able to start to explore sexuality without substances, we get the opportunity to see how we experience pleasure in different ways, which is really exciting.
Yeah, your body's not numbed out. It's available to the pleasure, like you say. It's available to just different levels, different sensations. It's available for you to open your senses in a much deeper way. And the journey is it's all about the explorative journey that we go upon. And so, right now there's a lot of, and there has been always, these recreational drugs as well. I guess we're going to put this into the categories of substances as well. And sometimes, these enhance your experience. And sometimes but I think that it's this situation when you're overstimulating yourself with substances, that you kind of start to lose your connection to yourself and what it is that who you really are around this situation sexually. You say you work with people that have had substance abuse and then have just
Mm-hmm.
completely cut off the substances, and now they're moving in to sexuality, to a new part of who they are. Really, they're discovering a whole new themselves. And how is that for people that are doing that?
So it's like feeling like a virgin all over again.
Yeah.
It's like, if
That's exciting.
anyone, I mean, yeah, but it's kind of terrifying as well, like even in my own experience and listening to my clients talk, it was like, well, I did a lot of fun stuff that was like really wild and off the wall when I was drinking or when I was using. And like, what if I don't like that anymore? Or what if, I like something different? Or, like, I don't even know what I like because I was just doing whatever. So there's some fear around like, am I still that same person, or am I going to be as fun or explorative, or
Yeah.
who am I as a sexual being now? And a lot of people have had issues with trauma, whether they have had substance abuse issues or not, and they tend to disconnect from their bodies. So sometimes there's such a disconnect that um, it's a challenge to start experiencing actual body sensations, right?
Yeah.
So
You
it's
have to start
starting
from the beginning.
to
Yeah.
reconnect with your body and
Mm.
start to experience sensation in your body is like a whole new journey, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, it is. It really is. And I can associate with that when I was not that much younger, maybe 10 years ago, when I was partying a lot, going to a lot of clubs and taking a lot of various substances and having a blast. It puts you in a state of, I would like to use the word kind of numbness, where you do go through these sexual activities and this fun and this, you open the doors to all these possibilities. But when I've separated myself from that, it was a bit of a shock. And just as you were saying, like, okay, well, how am I supposed to have fun now? And what is it like to connect without that? Because that takes you to such a heightened state so quickly, right? But it's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely possible, and it is so much more. Like, you can go to so many more beautiful places because you've opened the opportunity for yourself to find out who you are, who you really are, what you really want, what you really desire. This is who I am in the raw state, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we all want to be loved and accepted for who we are and not have to hide. And that's why I love your mission about like removing the shame and guilt around pleasure.
Yeah.
Because so much of our lives has told us that, we don't deserve pleasure, or you can have too much pleasure. And I think a lot of us are wired for pain or for the rejection piece. And it's like something good happens, and then you're like, oh, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, or my luck's going to run out, and then something bad's going to happen. So I think our tolerance for pain is so much higher than it is for pleasure. And sometimes people use substances to avoid pain, right? And sometimes we
Yeah.
use it to find pleasure. But what would it be like to, expand our tolerance for pleasure and acceptance of ourselves without having to use any substances, without being dependent on that?
Yeah, exactly. And it is, I think generally our default goes to pain, whatever the pain is, pain in what you think about yourself or physical pain. It's always, it seems to be the easier default. And we have to actually be super conscious to say, okay, I'm going to choose pleasure. I am worthy of pleasure. I want to see, what does this actually feel like to be, to open to pleasure, to open to happiness, to the joy of it, to sex in a way where yes, I am super vulnerable because I'm not on certain substances to sort of numb my fear. But what does that feel like to really, really go into the pleasure? Really feel my partner's body and feel what it's like to be, like you say, just even the touch, to really be touched. It's another level. It's a very different level altogether.
Yeah, it's a deeper level of connection and intimacy. And, um, sometimes it does take a little bit of chipping away at that wall over time to open up and be vulnerable. But I love what you just said about, it's really about like our self-worth, and
Yeah,
knowing that we deserve this. And I think we'd even said it on the phone when we were talking about, this is our birthright. We're
yeah,
here to experience pleasure. And
yeah,
yeah, and we are worth it. You are worth it. So it's
absolutely.
it's getting rid of all of those messages and things that say that we're not enough, and that we have to change who we are in order to be happy or meet someone else's needs. So it's like coming from a place of empowerment rather than desperation. And I think you can always feel energetically when someone's coming from desperation, right? Like it kind of gives you like a creepy vibe, or a like a latching on kind of vibe. No matter what they're saying, if they're coming from a place energetically of desperation, it's a huge turnoff. But when we
Yeah,
come from a state of empowerment, then that's a turn on.
yeah,
You don't even have to
yeah,
be confident necessarily, but if you feel empowered in who you are and solid in who you are, like I think that breeds confidence, and people feel that and like want to be around you because you're letting your light shine and you're being who you are fully. And so that gives other people permission to be themselves fully.
absolutely. And so that's the same going when it comes to sexuality. Be yourself fully in who you are as a sexual being. And you can't know that and you can't be that unless you dive in a little bit, find out what that's all about, and then go into enjoying sexual experiences without trying to numb yourself. Go in to find out who you are, you
Yeah.
know?
And that's one reason why I love the blueprints, because it's it gives you an acceptance of how you're wired. You
Mm,
know, it's
that's
not
cool.
one is better than the other. So it's not like a hierarchy. It's just that once you have acceptance of, oh, this is just kind of how I'm wired, and that's how my partner's wired. Now that I know this about me, then I can accept myself and I can find ways to feed myself and step into pleasure myself, And it's not dependent on what someone else wants to do or what someone else needs. I can meet my partner's needs from a conscious place, but I can also meet my own needs.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I find a lot with people that I work with. They're saying, well, I want them to be happy. Well, I want them to be happy. Well, and we're not focusing on our own happiness first, our own intimate connection first. When we know that, and we're clear, like we were talking about earlier, journaling a little bit about, who you are sexually and what it is that you want. When you start to know that, it's so much easier to come to the situation and then be able to be part of the pleasing of the partner, because you know what you want, you know who you are, and then your partner wants to see you happy, whoever you're with wants to see you pleased, so you have to know about yourself in order to feel that pleasure.
Yeah, and if I don't tell someone what I want, how are they supposed to know?
Mind
So
reading.
yeah, that doesn't happen a lot of the times.
Yet.
And yeah, and I think too, like with what you're saying with well, I just want to please my partner. Well, it's like, well, why do you just want to please your partner? And there is an act and an aspect of that of being of service, but there's also, I think, a shadow side that's sometimes there that's like, well, I want to do something to them. I want to do this. And I get my self-worth, or I know that I'm a good person or a great lover if I can do this to this other person. When the reality is, if I'm not in a place to experience orgasm, I'm not going to. If your head isn't in there and you're not in tune with your body, like, it's not happening. It doesn't matter what someone does to me. I have to be open to receive that. So I think there's a difference between saying, yes, I'm open to receiving this pleasure from you. So yes, please do this. But when it comes from a place of like, well, I'm going to do something so I make myself feel better to know that I've achieved something, then there's kind of like a shadow there. There's a little bit of a disconnect.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. Wow, very interesting conversation. I'm wondering if anybody has any questions. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what exactly is happening on Facebook, but I see we're there and there are people in and out. Anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to ask at this point? Because I think we're going to start to wrap up.
Yeah, or if anyone watches this replay and has questions, they can always type it in the comments, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube.
Absolutely. And I will be posting this again, the recording, because I'm not sure what's happening there. I see people popping in and out though. So who knows? Stacy, you have a number of things that you're doing and programs that you offer. I think the blueprint is this fabulous look into one's sexuality that you offer, and how I guess I can put your information down if people want to get a hold of you.
Yeah, for sure. My email is holisticprogressions@gmail.com. So that is always available if anyone has any questions or comments after seeing this. My website is holisticprogressions.com, where you can find more information about what I do and also a client application. So if anyone's listening to this and they feel called to explore the subject more, then send me a client application from my website.
Absolutely, and we can post that in the comments. And yeah, Glenn, you missed it, and this will be on Facebook again. I'll repost it. I'm going to post it on my YouTube, and Stacy will probably post it on her YouTube as well. So you'll have an opportunity to look through this again another time.
Yeah. And if anyone does do Facebook groups and stuff, I do have a group called Sober Intimacy that is specifically, I post topics and conversations around sexuality and sobriety, or sexuality and recovery, or anything that would help someone navigate that that journey.
Mm-hmm.
So you can always
Mm-hmm.
join that too, that I can send you.
That's great. That's fabulous. And right now we're on my personal Facebook, but I have a group that I started called the Shameless Pleasure Movement. And as that grows, I will be shifting my interview videos over there. So please come and join the Shameless Pleasure Movement. I will put that in the comments below as well. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been really fun and interesting, and it's just such an important topic. There's just so many tangents that we can talk about around this, but I think we've
Yeah.
like hit some really important points. And
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to support your movements.
Yes, great. It's been so nice to see you. So we will talk again soon sometime. Thanks, Stacy. And I will see if I can
Excellent.
figure out how to end the live. Bye.